To actually forgive means to understand that we're all imperfect, that we all make mistakes. Those are the words of Karina Calver on her TED Talk. Today's episode on Tackling Minds, we have Karina with us. And we go on a journey of why advocating for men's work is so important to us. How we unknowingly bring damaging behaviors into our relationships. What holding space for someone can actually look like. And the power of forgiveness, which is the title of her TED Talk. Guys, this episode is an example of how I wish we can practice deeper coffee chats. So grab yourself something warm, get cozy, and we're gonna go there together. I'm glad you're here. Karina, what would you like people to know about you, and what are you currently passionate about?
The not so serious stuff, I'm super goofy. So I love to laugh. That's for sure. And the more serious stuff would be I love to love. So one of the things that's really big for me is whether in the field of teaching, I always tell my students, I love you. And they're like, being Hong Kong kids, they're like, what? But now they're really used to the fact that I'll always throw in, I love you. And when it comes to counseling or coaching men, I'm all about making sure that they understand that not love per se, but having a healthy relationship with yourself and having a strong, loving relationship with your partner is really important. These are things that are really important to me. And that's kind of like my mission. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of who I am as well. So the ultimate is it's all about being able to bring impact in the skill set or in what I believe to be important, right? Because bringing meaning to life is important. Building strong relationship is important. Leaving a legacy in what I think is important, which is really, again, love, having strong relationships. To contextualize this, being brown, being Indian, one of the things that's really important to me is ensuring that the brown communities worldwide understand that love is important. Because right now, I feel that's changing, right? So I work with the Indian people even more today than I've ever had when it comes to Hukum, when it comes to counseling and coaching. That's why the podcast too, right? Because it says To Brown, which is the title. It is to talk about all the things that we shy away from, that are tabooed. Whether it's, the whole in-law situation, the dowry system, rape will be talked about later on. So there are a lot of things that, even sex for that matter. So I feel there is a need to address things that don't get addressed. That's why the podcast took form. In the same way with coaching and counseling, it's about talking about things that people don't usually talk about in their relationship. And that's why over the years they have issues. And they're considering divorcing, considering to be separated. It's because they don't know how to communicate. They don't have the tools to strengthen the relationship. So it boils down to, what am I passionate about? Love. What do I stand for? Love. And so I will do whatever it takes in the skill set that I have and to bring that forward in the projects that I create.
Dude, within relationships, there's a common pattern of loving a broken human. Let's say whether you're thinking like you're saving a woman or you're loving a broken man, whatever it is. But is that really love, or do you see your partner as a project? So I want to know, I don't know, maybe that's something people need to really reflect on.
Yeah.
But in your experience working with couples, when do you need to make that distinction, and how do you help people make that distinction?
That's a good one. So when you are getting to know someone, right, and usually early stages of dating, that gets revealed. Because how someone responds to you emotionally, how available they are, how mature they are in dealing with whatever it is that you throw at them, right? You're going to say stuff, it might trigger them. And how do they respond to the triggers will tell you whether they're ready for a relationship. Now, if you take it on and say that, you know what, oh, I understand that they had really bad childhood or their parents neglected them. And so you feel pity. Pity is not love. But you look at it as love when it's not. And so you take that person on, and it becomes like your project because you want to help the wounded person. But the sad truth is we can't. We cannot help anyone unless they're willing to help themselves. And then we can guide them, sure. But no one can do your own inner work. Your healing journey is yours. So there are people who do date people who are unhealed and not even aware that they have stuff that they have to sort out, childhood wounds. They're not even aware. But if you're someone who is aware that your partner has these things, but you're like, you know what, but they're a good person, or they went through so much and it's okay. But then you're losing out. And they're not able to be their full potential because they cannot give you what you deserve and what you want. Because their pain is going to hold them back. When someone is hurting, right? They're going to put themselves first, or they're going to be reluctant to give so much, or they're constantly going to second guess how they should be. They're not going to flow in the dynamic of the connection. And the person who's more awake or more healed is not going to get what they want. So how is that a healthy relationship? It's not.
You know what I also wonder is the person who finds himself in the position of loving the other person who is maybe less aware of their wounds, less healed, have done less work, and has less practice in this realm. Does that say about the person who's giving the love or showing the love that there's something there for us to look upon as well? I definitely relate to that. When I reflect upon my relationships in the past, I've definitely found myself thinking that, yeah, okay, well, he's like that because he was abandoned as a kid and he grew up in the foster system in the US. That does something to your psyche. Then you realize you're not doing this person any good by letting that be the reason why they're an asshole.
Exactly. We justify the fact that they had a bad childhood, but they haven't actually done anything to make the turnaround. And so we still let the past be the reason for why they are the way they are. But the past is over and done with, and they need to do the work. But we then have so much compassion. We say, oh, but they went through that. But they went through that. It's done, right? So why are we still holding the past as so important that it's okay for them to be an asshole, like you said?
What does that say about us?
That we're kind at the wrong time, at the wrong person, at the wrong place.
So it's not like, maybe this is too general for everyone to say that. It's not like you have more to dive deeper within to understand why you're doing this. Is there another reason for it? Not to overanalyze, but to shift a different perspective.
Well, one, it could be that you're just not, see, it's so nice to, you almost feel heroic.
The hero complex.
Right, yeah, exactly. If you're able to somehow get this one person to have this wake-up call, and if it was you who got that person to wake up and realize, man, I got to do the inner work, then you'll feel so good about yourself, right? But that is such an illusion. No one really can do that. No one. The person did wake up and go, you know what? I can't believe I've been this way with you for all this time. It's because they had a realization. You could have been harping about that for years, but something hit them at their time. Not because of what you said at that very given moment. So then it goes back to you being kind and accepting of their past, thereby their current behavior, is not doing the relationship any good. Or rather, it's not doing you any good. So ask yourself, where's your self-respect? You deserve more. You deserve someone to treat you like you should be treated. Or maybe if you want to go down the rabbit hole, ask yourself why you're lowering your standards.
I think there's definitely a lot there. And it might sound like we're really just talking to the women within the relationship versus talking to the men. But
oh, yeah,
we're actually talking to anyone within the relationship who finds themselves in this side of the dynamic.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I say him more because, I'm referring to us as the gender, right? But this no gender. You could be a guy or a girl. It doesn't matter. You could have issues and could be a woman. It doesn't matter. Both genders play out where they are guarded and they can treat the other person not in the best light because of their pain. That's not been addressed, and that's not fair on the other person.
I think that's such a key reminder. Are we being fair to the other person? And in the action of that, in the process of that, are we being fair to ourselves?
Right? This was happening to us, and we're tolerating it. But if they were receiving it, so if in return they got the treatment that we were giving out, that they were giving to us, you mean if it was flipped around, they wouldn't accept it. So why is it okay for us to have a lower standard? Because if a guy was treated in the way that they're treating us, I'm just again using this gender because us being women, they'd be like, hey, no, this is not okay. Like whether it's disrespect, not intentionally, but it still is. It cannot be okay. I always feel, what are the key things that you look for in a relationship? And do you provide that as well? If you do, then it's fair to have that standard for someone else to step up and provide that as well in the relationship. You got to ask, what is it that I can show up for? What can I offer in this relationship? And if I can offer that, it's fair for me to ask for the same in return.
All's fair in love and war.
Totally.
And I'm glad you clarified all that it doesn't have to fall within a gender norm. However, it's hard for me to ignore that they are gender norms and they are roles that society has inflicted pressure upon, or we grew up within cultures and environments where the pressure is more and maybe more significant than others. And I think that's something really important for us to look at. When I first started looking into advocating for men's work, I realized that it's just not fair to assume that every man or every boy grew up with the same struggles and challenges and the layers of nuances. Take us, for example. We were born and raised in a country where not everyone looks exactly like us or exactly the same. And we've interacted with a lot of different people. And in some way, there's a third culture involved even when we grew up in a bicultural environment. Mm-hmm. So it's safe to say that not every man is going to grow up feeling like they were not allowed to express themselves. Or not every man is going to grow up thinking that they need to only do certain things to then be seen as a man. So within your journey in doing men's work, what are the nuances that really bothered you along the way?
Most of the time I'm only work with brown men. One of the things that I saw a whole lot of is the need, obviously, to provide, right? There's a very strong need for men, especially for brown men. I can't speak for other cultures, so I'm going to just focus on brown men because that's what I know most, is the need to provide. And what that really just boils down to is financially being stable. And that I can understand. But to the point that that's all they understand, that their role is just that. And so the problem that this brings is that they don't see a need to be emotionally connected as much. That's not something that they need to tap into when in a relationship. So over the course of the years, what happens is if they're married or if they're in a relationship, it becomes a problem. Because then there is not just a huge gap between them and their partners, but also the partner is starting to feel neglected. And so that's when everything starts to fall apart. Because they don't even understand that that's a requirement for them. Growing up where suppression is key. You don't talk about feelings. It comes across as being weak. So you just kind of like soldier on and you do your thing. And when you keep having that kind of attitude where you just have to go, all right, we just suppress and we just keep hustling through, then everything else that's been going on has been bottled up. And over time, it will explode. If it doesn't explode for you, it's going to explode in the relationship. And that's still an explosion that needs to be addressed. So that's very common.
Do you feel like you can trust a man who says that they don't feel a need to explode?
Yes and no. I have definitely seen that. I've seen men who don't feel the need to explode. But if they don't feel a need to explode, someone else around them is exploding.
Good reminder.
Right? So, see, the thing is, they have this very misconstrued concept of what it is to be masculine. It doesn't mean you shun your feminine side, because we have both. And so they think that they don't have to be emotional and connected. They feel that they don't have to express their feelings. So the longer you believe this misconstrued idea of what it means to be a man or to be masculine, then whoever you're with will experience just one part of you, the go-getter provider you, but not the soft, gentle, emotionally available you, which is also should be a part of you. And so over a period of time, it's going to affect the relationship. You may not see it because you're completely okay just being the provider, being that strong alpha. But it's also toxic when you keep pushing everything down.
How much of that do you have to do until that becomes kind of who you are? When you were describing all of that, what came to mind was I'm picturing, and again, we'll go back to the men-women example here and our experience as women, and we can only speculate the male experience because we've never experienced the male experience. But I imagine going to work, showing up to your male boss and your male peers, you can't help but feel like you don't have that permission to lean into feminine qualities. And when I say feminine qualities, I don't mean effeminate qualities. Soft skills that are hard and difficult to adopt and practice. And there's a reason why so many corporations invest a whole lot of money into hiring motivational coaches and professional coaches, executive leadership coaches to teach you these soft skills.
Isn't that interesting?
That is
crazy, right?
bewildering.
Yeah, you innately have this. But because you have suppressed it for so long, the dire need for this is now coming out. But it was so important for you to just climb up the ladder, right? To provide and to be whatever it is that you set your mind to be in terms of this corporate world. Everything soft, everything feminine, all these things became unimportant. And over a period of time, when it starts affecting relationships, when it starts affecting your mental health, when it starts affecting you in a more tangible way, that's when you pay attention to it. So it's different for different people, right? Depending on how long they've suppressed it, depending on the kind of childhood wounds they've had, what kind of upbringing they've had, how much of expression they saw growing up, what kind of partners they had before they were in this particular relationship, and how much permission they had, or how much their partner was holding space for them. All of these things are paramount in a guy's ability to lean into that kind of emotion.
When you said, how can a partner hold space for them? For the person who hasn't done any maybe inner work or shadow work or work on themselves and asking themselves the real questions, the tough questions that stops them in their tracks and make them come clean to themselves, make them confront their own honesty. But as partners, how should they hold space and what exactly can that look like?
So when a guy is having a rough time, whether it's at work, but he just feels like he can't do this no more, like it's affecting his state of mind. He's feeling maybe like a loser, like a failure. And you can see that it's getting to him. And as a partner, noticing that this is going through, your husband's going through it or your boyfriend's going through it, is being gentle about it and saying, hey, whatever it is you're going through, I'm here. We can talk about it when you're ready. Or I can just hold you if that's what makes you comfortable. But know that I believe in you and you're going to get through this. But I want you to know that it is safe for you to tell me whatever. You're never judged. Between you and I, it is completely okay that you show me whatever it is that you want to show me. Or tell me whatever it is that you want to tell me. At your time, when you're ready, I'm here to listen. It is really just being gentle. Because remember, men don't see gentleness at all. They don't see it. They see, come on, man. Let's do it. Whether it's at the gym. All right, give me 5 more reps. You go at work. It's due in 5 minutes. Come on, man. They see that. Gentleness, they don't see it. So when you go home to a woman who is just like on your case, he's not going to open up to her. Hell no, he's not. No matter what you think you're saying, he's like, how was your day? Yeah, it's all right. You don't look really good. Yeah, it was rough. Why was it rough? If you have that tone, that's not holding space. He's not going to tell you a word. Because your intention isn't to be gentle and to truly be compassionate in listening to him. So that has to do with you coming back to your feminine energy and you truly saying, I want to hear you because I want to connect with you. I want to understand what's going on with you because I want to just connect with you. I want to be there for you. And it doesn't mean we're solving problems, but that you can talk about it.
That right there, it sounds important, and it is important. What I'm hearing there is it's not just about the things that you say. It's not just that you told this person that, hey, you can talk to me. But then your actions kind of go against it. And your actions being the tone you use, the nonverbal language, the expressions of contempt, and maybe even the condescending nature that you bring, an agenda that you bring to the conversation and to the approach. Men's work does not solely fall on men's head.
No.
It is within whatever interpersonal relationship that is, whether it's a parent-child, whether it's a colleague, peer, neighbor, friendship, and intimate relationships. If we want the other person to be aware of what they're doing in their work, how are we showing up to that equation?
Exactly. And I don't want to put the burden on a romantic connection, right? But you have the most powerful dynamic there. The ability to really get him to open up. Because that's one of the most strongest relationships. With that being so strong, if you know how to lean into your feminine energy and if you know how to be soft, if you know how to like just hold him and say, honey, I'm with you on this. I don't know what's going on. And if you want to share, I'm here to listen. But we got this, okay? We got this. You got me, and together we're going to sail through this. And trust me, he is going to melt.
I wish someone had taught this in high school or something, or during the years and ages, so we don't have to go through so many heartbreaks that seem to be catastrophic at that age.
I'm with you on that. I wish they taught this in high school, or even, actually, no, even in university would be pretty all right.
Yeah, at that age when you're more comfortable talking about these topics. I was going to say maybe like if this becomes normal in the household, especially growing up when as a kid you don't know any better. You lean into the figures in your home to feel safe, to feel like you're being led on a path of exploration and growing into yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And how that ties into, look, not every man grows up in the same type of household. And when we talk about the household not being a safe place to refer back to, for us to remember even, that happens for all genders. So when we're talking to anyone who didn't grow up with the experience of a safe home and have safe memories, how can we show up for that person? And could you share your experience as well growing up so people know where you're coming from?
Sure. So let me answer your first part of the question, right? How do we show up for someone who didn't have a safe home growing up? We can show up for people provided they're willing to get vulnerable. When they are ready to let that guard down and actually be open and naked emotionally about what it is they're feeling. While you're ready to listen, but if they're not ready to talk about it, then you can't go anywhere. So that's paramount, that they need to be ready to acknowledge whatever it is that happened when they were a kid or whatever wounds that haven't been addressed. And then, in the course of their journeys to figure out what it is that they need, whether they need counseling, whether they need to start journaling, whether they need to talk about it more, that's for them to figure out as they go. But you cannot hold space if someone's not even willing to acknowledge for real, like what took place and what's constantly triggering them time and time again. The ownership is on the person going through that pain. Only then can the other people around be gentle, be loving, be compassionate in actively listening to them. And that's huge in itself, but you can't really do more. That, I am there for you, but I can't have you open up because I'm telling you to open up. You have to be willing to do that, because knowing that opening up is actually going to help you in the long run. I'm not saying the work in opening up is easy. It's not, and I get it, but I'm here holding your hand through the process. But men are afraid, and the reason they're afraid is because they've never had to look within. They've never had to deal with soft skills and vulnerability. So to suddenly dive into all those feelings and go into the flashback mode of what happened and how they felt they were not good enough and how they felt that they have to overcompensate, that's not a good feeling to address. So what do? Let's just lock that, right? The more you lock it, you just cover it up with more stuff. But at some point when someone else you come across is better than you and you feel threatened, it's going to trigger that very old, that label that you have of yourself, which is, I'm not good enough. And it will be so much bigger than it was. And it's going to keep happening until you address it. And I can relate to that because growing up, and it's not like I did not have any pleasant memories of my childhood, but I had a whole lot of experiences of not being pleasant. So I know what it's like to feel alone and not know how am I going to come through the other end, and how am I going to figure out, what to do, or you just get lost because you don't even know yourself, right? And having a really rough childhood can affect so many parts of your life as an adult. So I can totally understand that. It could make your relationships very difficult because you could be people pleasing or shutting down, like either one, or running away, because getting close can be scary. Because what if that person shuts me down? Because I was shut down when I was a kid. So what if that person leaves me? I better leave first. Or I'm not sure I'm good enough. Maybe I should just end it now. There's all these things that people show up in grown-up relationships because of something that happened when they were a kid. And that is actually trauma. Because trauma isn't about something catastrophic like a death or rape or whatever have you. Trauma can be something that it could be just your parents just not being there for you when you're growing up. And you had to always do things for yourself. And so you felt unloved. But maybe they were constantly, when they were around, telling you, what? You just got 90 in your test? Or, things like that. And that could stick big time. So you wonder why you just keep going so hard right now. And you have to get that promotion, and you have to get this, and you have to get the best car and best, because you feel you have to live up to some sort of label from your childhood, that you have to be enough, whatever enough is.
One of my really good friends and I have been exploring this topic, I guess, this realm, this umbrella term in the past kind of 6 months. And we've given each other permission to just drop in random thoughts and random rants and vents and just thought processes within our chat. And we call it the diary. You drop it in and there's no need for the other person to respond. So it kind of removes the obligation there to think of, oh my God, how am I going to show up for this person? But no, this person just wants to let it out, and that's it. You don't have to do anything about that. I think it's really cool. And what we share in common is we grew up in the household, a Chinese family, typical Chinese family, where we feel like our worth lays in our grades. We had to come home with A's, and we have to continually achieve a certain position at work, and we have to earn a certain amount to be able to go to our parents and kind of have that presentation. And here's my presentation. Here's my portfolio. Love me. Love me.
Let my grades show that I'm deserving of love.
That is not uncommon at all. That is so common with a lot of people around the world who grew up with that kind of like when you talk about, with kids, as we grow up, we don't really know exactly at which point in life that something might have happened that would fall in the bucket of trauma. Because to some people, they would think, well, you had a good life growing up. You had a roof over your head. You were not poor. You never got beaten up. Like, you were fine growing up. And actually, that's something I heard from one of my parents in terms of, well, I'll just go and say it. My dad didn't understand why I was going through a lot of things, because for him and to what he can see, and we had a really like in-depth conversation about this. To him, what he could see is, you were fine growing up. You didn't have a traumatic childhood. We didn't beat you. Well, I mean, your mom kind of caned you sometimes, of course, but which Chinese family didn't have that kind of situation growing up back in the 80s, 90s? And I had to tell him about all the other things that happened out of the home that contributed to traumatic experiences, or to experiences that were pretty significant, especially at that age.
Definitely.
And I think maybe that's also one of the contributing factors on why, as we are adulting, in the process of adulting, we recognize and see and experience a lot more friction with our parents. And in that dynamic, that also has a tie-in with how we approach our intimate relationships. When we don't even know how to communicate with someone that we spent all of our lives with, how are we able to find skills and have practice finding common ground and communication skills to communicate with someone we want to make a life with and want to do life with?
Yeah.
Perhaps as women, we have a lot more permission and practice to talk to each other, like just how we're having this conversation right now. For some people, it's going to sound heavy. It's going to sound like, yo, this is not dinner conversation. Can we talk about movies and weather, please? Let's not talk about this.
Yeah.
But I think for you and I, it feels like second nature. It feels like this is what's important to me and it's true to heart, and we can talk about this with passion. But with many men, maybe they don't feel like they have enough exposure to practice. Now, I want to talk about those men who don't have practice in the past, or minimal practice. And it's natural that we feel some type of way that we're not good at something right from the start. Typical, right? I'm going to learn this. I'm going to learn basketball. I'm not good at it. And I suck. Oh, I don't want to continue it anymore.
Yeah.
But if you don't practice, you're never going to get good at it, or you're never going to feel comfortable with it. In your experience, personally as well as professionally, how can someone kind of get over this hurdle of not being good enough in the beginning of a skill, of this practice, to then be able to finally walk forward from not being good enough to, oh, wow, okay, I'm getting comfortable with this now. I'm feeling less triggered. Now there's more freedom. Now there's more relaxation. And now there's more confidence in ourselves, to be honest.
That's a really good question. Unlike a sport or an interest, you can live without it. You cannot live without your soft skills. You cannot live without your feminine energy. It's a part of who you are. You can ignore it, but it's going to come and bite you in the ass. The fact that you can have relationship issues, the fact that you're blowing up and getting mad for no reason, or for really minute stuff, isn't this a sign that something is not being looked at? So it isn't about being good at it, but it's the fact that we need to understand that this is something we need. As men, you need to be able to know that I will suck at this in the beginning, and that's okay. Where no one's grading you. You're not going to get a report card saying, man, you got A for looking at your soft skills today, or you learned something about your feminine side. You ain't getting that. What you are getting is the ability to know how you feel and being able to label it for yourself. So the moment you're getting angry, you don't have to actually blow up, but you notice, okay, I'm feeling angry. What's brewing this anger? What's stirring it up? Before it actually starts exploding. And it helps you manage yourself better, your relationships better. It's a success tool. So the question here isn't about what do I need or how do I stage it so that I get better at it, but it's realizing how important it is so that you can be your best version. Because without you tapping into your feminine side and exploring vulnerability, you're shutting down a part of you, half of you. And do you not deserve to know all of you? The good, the bad, the ugly? Why label something as bad when it's a part of you? Emotions are not bad, it just is. If you're feeling angry, you're feeling angry. Acknowledge versus act out. They're two very different things. Acknowledge that you're feeling mad. If you want to act it out, go punch a bag. Go to the boxing gym. You're feeling angry, get out to the mountain and scream your head off. Go do that.
That's something I actually really want to do.
Right? It's fair. You can continue living life ignoring that part of you until it's too late. Where you've sabotaged so many relationships and you wonder, okay, why did that person leave me? And why did this happen? And why did that happen? And you might even go on blaming everyone else. And that's fine. That's fine, because there will come a time that you will have to deal with it. Because if something is constantly occurring again and again and again, you have to stop and pause and wonder what's really going on here.
That's going to be a tough moment and a very confronting, maybe even shocking moment. Mm-hmm. I relate to that.
Scary. Scary as hell.
I actually went through a chapter in my life where I thought that, you know what? All men are the same. They're incapable of being loyal and faithful. Just find one that you're happy hanging out with, call him your companion, and just call it that. I was 21 and I was already settling with this mindset. That's why I got married when I was 23, because I was with this mindset. Mm-hmm. My really good friend, the one I mentioned that we have this diary practice, he was actually the first one who confronted me and asked me, okay, so you telling me that this boyfriend cheated on you before, and that boyfriend cheated on you before, and that guy, and now this one again as well. What's the common denominator there? Specifically, who's the common denominator there? Oh my God, I remember feeling attacked right away. Yeah. But at the same time, like, you know what? Oh my God, you're so right. What is it? Now, I could have gone two ways, right? I could have ruminated. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I always attracting this? But that doesn't sound constructive or productive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Instead, you can go the other way and reflect on the behavior and the energy that you brought to the table. Mm-hmm. If you brought the energy to the table thinking that he's just going to cheat on me, you're telling yourself that. You're preempting the future because you want to mitigate the amount of harm and pain that is going to bring you if and when that happens. Mm-hmm. The other person is not immune to this. We're humans, and innately, naturally, we can sense each other's energy, even without saying a single word.
100%.
So unconsciously, I was already sabotaging all of my relationships.
You were actually bringing that to your world.
Exactly.
Crazy,
I think
right?
that's something that might be worth looking into and checking back on. As I'm going through this journey of, I'm going to put everything in air quotes here, awakening, healing, all of these words that are triggering for some people, but it resonates with some people on a deep level, and it brings peace and calm to those words. The bottom of this, there's some form of forgiveness that we first have to apply for ourselves.
Yes, I was going to say fuck yes.
Yeah, we can say fuck yes here. I'm already going to take this as, look, it's not suitable for kids. Do not listen to this episode when you're in the car with kids unless you want them to, be real and ask you a whole bunch of questions. And when I found out that your TED Talk was around forgiveness, I thought to myself, yes, this is exactly why I need to talk to Karina. I would like you to expand on the important message that you shared on that stage.
It's funny because I spent about a year, if not more, before and after that, so maybe 2 years, really focusing on forgiveness, on my personal journey. But even when anyone ever invited me to speak, it was always about forgiveness because it was something that was so profoundly important in my life. I couldn't stress. I know that it's not important right now, but there was a point in my life where I really wanted to integrate forgiveness into an episode that was once upon a time unforgivable. And the moment I was able to forgive, I was like, man, I gotta talk about forgiveness all the time. Everyone needs to understand you gotta forgive. It's the way to go.
Spread the gospel, girl. Spread the gospel.
Right. I'm gospeling this everywhere. And so when I was asked by HKU to do this TED Talk, I said I only want to talk about forgiveness. When I drafted my speech for them, and we had to do all these rehearsals and whatnot, and they were blown away. But it's not about, it's more about the content than anything else, right? Because when you talk about forgiving yourself, oh God, yes. Because sometimes we punish ourselves far more than we should. We beat ourselves over and over again about something that went wrong. Something small, something big, but we keep repeating it in our heads. Oh my God, why did I do that? I'm so crazy. I shouldn't have. That's so stupid. And we'll run it again and again. That's not helping, is it? And that's a sign of not forgiving yourself. And I went through that where I didn't forgive me. But more importantly, is I didn't forgive my father. At one point in my life, I never thought that was important until I realized in order to live a liberated, happy life, to feel love in all its glory, I needed to forgive my dad. And I did not, prior to that realization, I did not see the connection. And the connection is this, right? When you let pain hold you back so much so that you can't really be in the present moment, meaning if someone talks about a sort of event and it triggers that wound, then you're stuck. You're not really in the present moment. And I didn't want to be that person anymore. I didn't want people to talk about the events of my past, which was very traumatic, that it would affect my present moment. And because I didn't want that, I knew I had to forgive. So that was the journey I went on, is learning how to forgive the very person who destroyed any possibility of me feeling normal, sane, happy as a kid. And coming out the other end of this whole forgiveness journey, and it's not like I knew when that happened. Because people think, oh, you're going to get up one day and just like, yay, I'm all good. And it's not like that, right? With anything, we're on a journey of inner work. You just don't, it's not linear. So you don't actually know until you wake up one day and you're going about your day and someone brings up your father and you don't feel nothing. You don't feel the triggers anymore. Your heart's fine. It's still happy. It's still loving. And then like, oh, okay. I'm not like, oh, I can't believe, I wasn't getting pissed. I wasn't getting angry, but I was cool. I was calm. And I'm like, oh my God, something has happened here. And I had such joy having that realization, but such calmness at the same time. And that's when I know I reached that aha moment where the stuff of the past, for those that are listening who don't know, I'm a rape survivor. And the perpetrator was my father. And this went on for over a decade. So to say that it ruined my childhood, a big part of my childhood is an understatement. Coming out the other end, I'm just feeling, like just not just relieved, but like, damn, I actually feel okay. Like nothing's happening, man. To test this out even further, I must be crazy, but I did. I actually texted my father and I said, because I hadn't spoken to him for years. And I said, I would like us to talk. And I said, just FYI, I'm not going to be screaming my head off and getting mad at you, which I had in the past. And I said, let me know when it's a good time to call you. So I did. I called him and we spoke. And I told him I forgive him. And he cried and cried like I've never heard. And that for me was good. Not that he cried, but because I also believe in death. A part of me really integrates Buddhist teachings. And so one of the things about death is really, or about Buddhism, it's about understanding that death can happen at any point, right? I do not want him or me to be at the deathbed thinking about what ifs, thinking about, did she forgive me? Or me thinking, should I have forgiven him? Or anything of that sort, right? Whatever. So because I live in this concept of death can happen at any point, I don't want to carry any kind of pain in my heart. So whoever I feel has done me wrong or I've done them wrong, I want to patch up. And I believe I have. And those that have, drifted apart, that's a different story altogether. But with him in particular, there was a huge need for it. And that call was very, very cathartic for him and for me. And that was kind of the turning point even more.
I felt like I just went on a journey with you. I had to mute my mic because I was sniffling. Thank you, first of all, for being so real about that. What I heard and what I felt. So much power there. There's so much power that you regained. There's so much power that you now exude and you embody. And this power is not the power to dominate. The power you have on how you manage and how you want the energy to flow through you. You speak about not wanting certain things when the time comes. We're humans. We are going to be on our deathbeds. For some people, it will come sooner. I know how that is. And I relate to you. On my deathbed with cancer, my first thought was, what are my relationships like? It wasn't at work. It wasn't with anything else. It was, I want my family. I don't care what they've done. I don't care about anything that we've been through. I just want them. To hear you approach forgiveness in this way, it's very empowering for me and inspiring for me to hear. And I really hope that whoever's listening right now, that you allow yourself to feel what Karina just shared here. To allow yourself to imagine what it could be like if you just entertain the idea of forgiving whoever is consuming so much energy in your brain, in your heart right now.
That's key, right? Because one of the things I remember saying when I ended my TED Talk was, as you leave today, make that one phone call. Pick up that phone and tell that person, I'm sorry if they've done you wrong, if you've done them wrong, whatever it is. Oh, I love you. Like, reconnect, because it's not worth it. I'm not saying, now it's very different from having no boundaries. That's very different. So I still have my boundaries in check with my father and with people who I feel I need to keep certain distance. But that's very different from forgiveness. Because there is one level of being mature and being wise, and another one's just being stupid and saying, oh, okay, I've forgiven you. Now you can come back into my world and do whatever you want. No, that's just being pathetic. That's being dumb. So you got to wisen up a little bit. Someone who's hurt you, they may not have changed. You've evolved. Okay, good for you. They could still be the same. You don't want to carry this for you, because you want to live the best life that you can live. So you let this go. Now, you don't have to tell that person you forgive them if you don't have the opportunity, if they've passed on. But in your heart space, you know when you have truly forgiven a person. And that you can do. If you want to reach out and let them know, you can do that too. I've done that with a lot of people even after my father, that I felt may have felt hurt. I'm divorced. And my ex-husband was an amazing person, but just not the person for me. But I know our divorce hurt him. I know it did. And now we're great friends. But we're only great friends now is because we were able to work through that. And I always said to him that I want nothing more than for us to be like a family. But as a sense, like, you're still family for me, but we're just not a couple anymore. And if you can believe that enough in your gut, in your heart, you believe that so much, you can create that. Because your actions will follow what you believe. And it should. Because I have a very high standard of life, meaning it's not about the material life, but I have high standard of myself. How I show up in the world is important to me. And that's the level of integrity I carry. I'm not concerned about how you show up, because that's on you. And how I'm involved in your life it all depends on our connection, right? But how I show up in my life, I have to answer to. So I'm really concerned about making sure that I don't carry resentment, that I don't carry pain and anger, because it doesn't do me any good. So if I've got stuff I need to sort out, I better sort it out. And that's exactly going back to the point of why do I work with men? I was hurt by men. The very person that's supposed to hold space and love you unconditionally hurt me like there's no tomorrow. And it doesn't mean that because I was raped. No, it simply means that I feel as a woman and as a counselor that I want to teach men that love how to love, what it means to love, what it means to be vulnerable, and how you can do this so freely and in such a safe manner. Because if we understand this, the chances of us suppressing or having, seeing violence or whatever have you will definitely be minimized. Because we're not being understood. We're not being loved. And that's why there's a backlash in a negative way. Mental health, bad relationships, high divorce, more violence, more addiction. Because men don't have an outlet. They don't know that they have an outlet. So I feel that when there are enough women who come together, but also men that come together to really support men, it can change the world. It sounds really utopian, but it can change the world.
And all it takes is one person to exemplify that within their network, within that circle, to then incept the idea with other people within the circle, the ripple effect as well.
Exactly. And it happens. It totally happens.
Thank you for describing and elaborating on how we can look at men's work in a more holistic manner. It's not just a black and white situation, which is the case in a very masculine, dominant environment.
Yeah.
Just show me black and white. I don't need to see the gray area.
Yeah.
Show me the index of a book. Tell me the key points. I don't need to read the fluff. One last one that I hope for you to expand on, and that is, if you don't feel like you can connect with the word love, and maybe your thought process is, I don't even know what that is. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know if I've ever experienced that.
Sure.
How do I even find ways to connect with that word? Or can I use a different word?
Compassion is love. Care, kindness, right? They're all love. They're all different forms of it. So when someone's being kind to you, it's showing love. When someone is compassionately listening to you, that's love, right? So there are different forms of love that we all carry out in different ways, and that in itself is love. So you don't have to, and I think, yes, love it could be seen as so heavy, and it could be seen as so beautiful. It depends on again, your perception, right? And if you find love so heavy, or just like, man, it doesn't exist, it's such a fairy tale, then maybe kindness. And how are you being kind to yourself so that you can let all of this stuff go? And that's important.
Thank you so much, Karina. This is
you.
a lot, I think, for anyone to process, but I really hope that each of us, including myself, will take some time after this chat to gift ourselves a moment of reflection and some me time, in your words.
Yes. Yes.
Reflection is me time.
Indeed. Indeed. And it's so important to reflect, right? It's like, am I who I want to be? And I don't mean it in the sense of in the outside world. Who do I want to be in the inside world? And that's something I always ask me. It's like, am I a better me? Am I kinder, more loving, more patient? Because if we're not growing that way, then what is this life for? It's not, I don't believe that it is just to make money and be successful. That's just a byproduct. The kind of connections you build, the kind of heart connections you build, or the real raw connections you build is what this is about. And through that connection, if you're, making money and becoming successful, that's great. But success is just, it's the aftermath. It's not the focus point. And when people focus on the money, that's where they've got it all wrong.
I think that's going to be another conversation. Finding what you really want to focus on. Not what you should focus on.
No.
But more of what feels right for you.
If you feel right about something, you dive in.
Thank you, Karina.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Oh, I feel for my brother.